Donald Trump is continuing to make America great again with decisions like this. Trump pick to oversee worker protections promoted sweatshops. What? Come on, man. That's almost beyond parody. He promoted sweatshops, and Trump picked him to oversee worker protections. Fox guarding the henhouse. That's what this is. I can't. Okay, here we go. There's lobbying, and then there's working with Jack Abramoff to promote the sweatshop economy on remote Pacific islands. If you want to know about that kind of lobbying, you can ask Patrick Pizzella, President Donald Trump's pick to be Deputy Labor Secretary, or maybe you can't. At a July Senate confirmation hearing, Pizzella said he didn't remember much about the work he did in the late 1990s to help the Northern Mariana Islands, a U.S. Commonwealth 1,500 miles from Japan, defeat a bipartisan effort to rein in a guest worker program that the Labor Department found relied on indentured workers. When Senator Al Franken asked Pizzella whether he knew about reports of forced abortions and routine beatings at the time, Pizzella replied, "I was not aware of any such thing." Pressed further, he said reports of abuse by multiple government agencies and newspapers were mere allegations. What Pizzella didn't say was that he helped lead a public relations campaign to rebrand the islands as a paragon of free market principles. Between 1996 and 2000, emails and billing records reviewed by Mother Jones showed that Pizzella and colleagues organized all expenses-paid trips to the islands for more than 100 members of Congress, their staffers, and conservative thought leaders. When they got back, Pizzella helped them convince colleagues that the Northern Mariana Islands were, as his old boss Abramoff liked to put it, a laboratory of liberty. Now Pizzella is poised to become America's second highest labor enforcer. If confirmed by the Senate, he'll be responsible for holding employers accountable in the Northern Mariana Islands and across the country. Pizzella, currently the acting chairman of the Federal Labor Relations Authority, a federal agency that handles government employees' labor disputes, declined to comment for this story. Okay, now let me show you just how disgusting this system is that we live in right now. He was picked for the position that he's currently in by Obama. Come again? Yes. So the guy who was in favor of sweatshops and defended sweatshops and worked with Jack Abramoff, a guy so motherfucking corrupt that he was found guilty of violating corruption laws in the United States of America. How dumb do you have to be to fuck up and get caught for corruption in America when corruption is basically legal? So Jack Abramoff, massively corrupt, a legendary corrupt prick. This guy worked with him and defended these sweatshops. And Obama picked him for a position in the government. And now Trump's like, well, fuck. Okay, let's give this the second most powerful worker protection position we have. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You couldn't craft something more preposterous than this. Like if you were reading a book, a fictional book, and they tried to lay out this scenario, a guy whose job was to defend sweatshops got picked to oversee worker protections. You would say, I know I would say, but perhaps you would say too, reading that's too far. That would never really happen. That's too much. Even in our disgusting system, people would say, pump the brakes. That was not a brake noise, was it? Skirt! My brake noises are not on point, I must say. But point is, you would say, oh, what? No, that's too far. That's too much. That would never happen. Nope, it's happening. It's happening right now. See, this is the oldest trick in the book for corrupt politicians. In reality, what Republicans would like to see, but apparently Obama to a certain extent wanted to see it as well. But what they want to see is the elimination of all regulation that gets in the way of their buddies in industry making a profit. Now, it's too brazen and in your face to say, you know what? We're going to eliminate the Environmental Protection Agency. We're going to eliminate the various agencies that oversee Wall Street. We're going to eliminate all these different agencies that are responsible for clean water, clean air, labor regulations. We're going to eliminate them. They can't do that because that's too much of a slap in the face and there'd be too much of an uproar around the country. So what do? You pick guys like this to do the work. In other words, you pick people who are familiar with the regulations because they're used to evading them. That's the whole point. The whole point is you have somebody who's not going to enforce any of these regulations. You really think Scott Pruitt, who sued the EPA 14 times, is going to enforce EPA regulations of industry? The guy's taking money from the fossil fuel industry. The guy agrees with them across the board. The guy sued the EPA 14 times. The guy does not believe in climate science. He's on the record as not believing in climate science. And this is the guy that's going to do the clean water and clean air protections and uphold those regulations and enforce them? Not a chance. But that's the point. Same thing here. Oh, yeah, worker protections. Who do we get that could look after worker protections? Bring in the guy who promoted sweatshops. Bring in the guy who defended a system where they had indentured servitude. You know, all the libertarians, like all the Ron Paul types who say, oh, we had too much regulation, too much red tape in this country. That's what's going on here. No, actually, we already live in a near anarcho-capitalist state. Because, sure, you have the government agencies to regulate, but then people like this are picked, and they do anything but that. So, but actually, let me be crystal clear. You don't have the regulations for big business, because they're the people who pay their campaign contributions. So they get the favors. But you do have regulation, and you do have protections at the small business level. So at the small business level, they uphold regulations, and some are, some make sense and some don't. Sometimes it actually is red tape. But if you don't pay your bribes, well, then the government can step in and shut you down if they see a couple things wrong in your place if you're a small business. So, but it's the big businesses, the giant multinational corporations that get away with doing whatever they want to do. This is a corporatist system. That's what this is. Big business can do whatever they want to do. There's no real workplace regulations, labor protections, environmental protections. And it's even worse than that because they get subsidies to boot, which is a giant corporate welfare check. So this is corporatism, which is socialism for the rich. Whenever it comes to socialism for you, hey man, we need unemployment insurance. Hey man, we need healthcare. We need education. That's when all of a sudden, but we don't have the money. We got a penny pinch. I don't know what you're talking about. Come on, we got to be fiscal conservatives here. We got to be deficit hawks. But when it comes to money for subsidies for multinational corporations, whether it's the $4 billion a year that goes to ExxonMobil, or the billions of dollars, $80 billion a year that goes to the big banks, when it comes to that, blank check. When it comes to war, oh my God, blank check. We've been in Afghanistan 16 years. So are we going to stay a 17th year? Yeah, why not? And not a single deficit hawk brings up the money. Not a single one says we wasted at least $2 trillion in Afghanistan, $7 trillion in Iraq. None of the deficit hawks care when it's about that. But when it's for you, all of a sudden, oh my God, we can't afford this. And we got a guy who worked with a guy who was one of the most corrupt people in U.S. history. He worked with him. It's his buddy. Somehow he escaped prosecution, but his whole job was to promote sweatshops. And now they say, you look perfect for the worker protection, to lead worker protections. It's hard to avoid the conclusion when you read stuff like this that the country is broken.